Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into a huge range of sources on African folklore and expressive culture. We want to move beyond just the simple definitions you might find in a textbook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our goal here is to explore the real depth, the function, and just how alive these traditions are, how they shape identity, how they, manage conflict, and even encode power. It's a living system.
And it's so important to understand the sheer scale we're talking about. Africa is, it's vast. Thousands of distinct ethnic groups, huge diversity.
Right.
But scholars who study Africa, Africanists, they generally look at the continent as a sort of comprehensive whole too, because there are these shared histories, shared geographies that create overlapping cultures.
Like the Sahara trade routes.
Exactly. Like North Africa's connection to sub-Saharan Africa. It goes back centuries,
Yeah.
especially, since the 7th century with Arabic and Islam spreading via traders, scholars. It links things up.
So we need to keep both things in mind, the local specifics and these bigger continental connections.
Precisely. It's a balancing act.
And when we say folklore or tradition, that whole idea has really expanded, hasn't it?
Oh, definitely. If you look back, say, early 20th century, the focus was often, pretty narrow. Mostly ancient myths, animal tales.
Things that got collected a lot, maybe more than they were actually central to the cultures.
That's a really key point. Sometimes the collections gave them disproportionate weight. But today, folklorists look at expressive behavior, folk life studies. It's much broader.
So not just stories.
Not just stories. Spoken arts are just one piece. We're looking at urban folklore, rural folklore, pastoralists, farmers, women's expressive culture, visual arts, verbal arts. It's all connected.
And the definition of tradition itself has changed too.
Right. Now, it basically includes any accepted pattern, a way of behaving, a way of speaking, a set of ideas that shapes how people act. It doesn't matter how old it is.
It doesn't have to be ancient to be traditional.
Not at all.
Well,
Which leads us to, I think, a core theme running through all these sources we looked at.
which is,
This amazing mix of continuity and creativity. Things stick around, the old is retained, but there's also constant invention. Something new is always bubbling up.
you see that really strongly in the African diaspora, right? In the Americas.
Absolutely. You get these deep, deep roots, but also this startling freshness. Cultural forms had to adapt, often under, incredible pressure, extreme repression, and they did. They found new ways.
Okay, so let's start with the verbal arts. Maybe the most famous figure globally from African folklore is the trickster.
Oh, definitely. Tricksters pop up all over the continent. And they're not always human, Sometimes it's an animal, like a hare or maybe a small antelope.
And they're always getting into trouble, outwitting bigger animals.
Usually, yeah. They sort of flip expectations on their head, which is funny, but there's a point to it.
What's the function then? Is it just entertainment?
Well, it is entertaining, but it's more than that. It's paradoxical, really.
Okay.
The trickster exists to break the rules. And by breaking the rules, by reversing everything that's normal or ordinary, they actually teach the audience what is ordinary, what's acceptable behavior.
Ah, I see. So kids learn the norms and adults kind of get them reinforced, but with a laugh.
Exactly. It's social learning, often with this humorous edge.
And the big one, most famous, is Anansi the spider.
Anansi, yeah, from the Ashanti people in Ghana. He's the classic example. And of course, he traveled across the Atlantic during the slave trade.
And he's still a big deal in the diaspora.
Yeah.
Jamaica, the Caribbean.
Very much alive.
Uh,
Absolutely. Still telling Anansi stories.
He's fascinating symbolically, too. This idea that he lives in the gaps, the interstices.
Mm-hmm. His web stretched between things. He's not quite here, not quite there, but somehow both at once. Mr. In-Between.
Like pure possibility.
That's a great way to put it. He embodies possibility. You know those stories where he, tricks the python into stretching out so he can measure him?
Yeah. And then ties him up.
Right. And delivers him to the sky god. It's pure subversion, it's cunning, it's funny, but it always has that edge.
Yeah.
It teaches you about survival, about social boundaries, about how cleverness can beat brute strength.
Okay, so if the trickster is about cunning and maybe disruption,
Right.
what about the hero figure?
The hero. That's more about the community ideal, you could say. The hero represents what the community aspires to.
Like bravery, smarts.
Bravery, intelligence, perseverance, yeah. And often they have supernatural powers too. They become these ideological vehicles for the group's hopes and values.
And heroism isn't just one thing, right? It can look different.
Exactly. It can be military leaders, warriors, but it can also be like shamanistic figures, heroes who get their power from spiritual knowledge, connection to ancestors.
And the epics are where these stories really get told on a grand scale.
Right, these long, complex poems, often sung or chanted, usually with music, telling the stories of heroes who maybe founded the state or brought about a new social order.
It sounds like more than just storytelling.
Oh, it is. The performance of an epic is a ritual experience. It's not just passive listening. It's meant to rekindle that feeling of shared identity, cohesion, solidarity.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about the Fulani Dari. These are epics often focused on successful cattle raids. Now, that might sound specific, but telling those stories reinforces the equal value of different Fulani clans against, say, a common enemy or a different way of life. It builds that internal unity.
And sometimes these heroes are actual historical figures, right? Not purely mythical.
Yes, definitely. Look at Mwana Malundi, the Sukuma hero. People see him as a real historical figure, a cult figure even. He's credited with defeating Maasai raiders, but also, and this is telling, outwitting the colonial authorities who'd imprisoned him.
So the stories help process real history, recent conflicts too.
Exactly. You can contrast him with someone like Masala Kulangwa, who's more of a pure trickster hero for the Sukuma, but even he served as a kind of prototype for their epic tradition. The lines blur. Trickster, hero, historical figure, they weave together in performance.
And you mentioned performance context being key. How does that work? Is it just someone telling a story?
Rarely just that simple. African storytelling is usually highly interactive. The audience isn't just sitting there quietly.
We'll jump in.
Oh, yeah. They're expected to respond with comments, questions, interjections. Sometimes they'll even get into a kind of dramatic dialogue with the characters in the story.
Wow.
And the performer loves that. They feel gratified by the participation. Call and response is often built right into the structure. It's a communal event.
Where do these performances happen?
All sorts of places. Depends on the culture, the time of day, the occasion. Could be in the family compound in the evening, maybe at the blacksmith's forge, in men's meeting houses, cult houses, during rituals, initiation lodges. It's woven into the fabric of life.
Which brings us back to something you touched on. This isn't always about literal truth.
No, not at all. It's what some call the aesthetic of fantasy. It's often explicitly stated up front that the story isn't, factual. Well, the Ashanti Ekan might start a story by saying, we don't really mean it. Or the Fanti Ekan narrator says, the tale is not meant to be believed.
And what does the audience say?
This is the brilliant part. The audience responds, it is meant to be kept.
So the valued isn't truth, it's preservation, artistry, memory.
Exactly. And for the Agni people, the phrase for telling a tale literally translates as to lie. It highlights that this is about imaginative fantasy, about aesthetic pleasure, not about historical accuracy. The artistry, the performance, that's what matters.
Okay, so if the trickster uses humor and maybe chaos to teach social norms, what happens when a society needs real order or needs to connect with, fundamental cosmic forces?
That's where you get into these specialized knowledge systems, often highly guarded. And a prime example is the Mande blacksmith and this concept of nyama.
The blacksmith. We mentioned the forge as a storytelling place, but they're much more than just metal workers, right?
Oh, vastly more. In Mande folklore and society, the blacksmith is, maybe the central figure in many ways. They connect the material world, taking raw, dirty iron ore and transforming it with fire and hammer into something useful, something refined directly with the supernatural.
How did that transformation connect to the supernatural?
It's believed that this process, this intense act of transformation, requires and also generates extraordinary levels of nyama.
Right, nyama. You called it supernatural energy earlier. Can we unpack that a bit more? What is it exactly?
Think of it as a kind of vital life force, a spiritual energy that's inherent in nature, but it gets concentrated, amplified, maybe even dangerous through acts of transformation.
Like working metal.
Exactly. Because the blacksmith is constantly working with fire, fundamentally changing the structure of the metal, they're seen as manipulating the very fabric of things. So they attract and harness huge amounts of this nyama.
That sounds powerful, but also risky.
Very risky. And that inherent danger, that volatility, is why the blacksmith's role is so carefully managed socially. Having all that nyama gives them immense prestige and power, yes, but it also requires extreme control, both personally and socially.
So how does the community handle that? How do they regulate someone wielding that much raw power?
That's the really clever part of the system. The high-risk nature of their work essentially forces the blacksmith into other vital, socially constructive roles.
Like what?
They often become sorcerers, herbal doctors, experts in divination. They lead powerful initiation associations. Because their status is high and because they understand these powerful forces, they become natural conflict
So they
mediators.
channel the power.
In a way, yes. And crucially, they lead the most spiritually potent associations in Mande society: Como for men, Naguan for women. Their whole life becomes about negotiating and managing the supernatural energy for the community's benefit.
It's a complete system then. The power comes with the job, but the job demands using that power responsibly through other community roles. That idea of power working indirectly, being managed carefully, it reminds me of what the sources said about the Akan royal orator, the Okiame.
Yes, another fantastic example. The Okiam isn't just like a translator or announcer. They are the chief's official diplomat, their liaison, their spokesperson. They hold the key communication role in the traditional Akan political structure.
And the whole system emphasizes not speaking directly. Indirection.
Very much so. Rhetorical indirection and avoidance are central. The Okiame's job is often described as embellishing the chief's words to facilitate consumption.
So they're like a buffer, filtering the chief's words, making them palatable, maybe less direct.
Exactly, a highly skilled buffer. It insulates the chief, who is often seen as sacred, almost divine, from the messy everyday details and potential dangers of the world. Direct, blunt speech could contaminate that sacred status. It's part of what scholars call divine kingship.
So how do they achieve that indirection?
Through mastery of rhetoric, their speech is packed with proverbs, euphemisms, irony, hyperbole. It's very intertextual, meaning it refers constantly to other stories, other sayings. It relies on semantic vagueness, ambiguity.
Leaving room for interpretation.
Right. It constructs these cognitive structures with multiple possibilities. The listener has to actively work to understand the meaning or meanings. Ambiguity isn't a flaw, it's a tool.
It's fascinating how something we often see as negative in communication ambiguity is actually a deliberate, valued technique for maintaining power and protecting sanctity.
Completely.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
Yeah.
How do these cultures organize time and the cosmos itself? We hear about calendars, architecture.
Well, you have different systems. Ancient Egyptians famously used stellar calendars, tracking stars. Many cultures use solar calendars, watching the solstices, the longest and shortest days. Measuring the year from winter solstice to winter solstice gives you that 365.24-day tropical year. Pretty standard.
But the Akan in Ghana did something different, right? More complex.
Yeah. They did. Really remarkable, actually. They combined two different existing weekly cycles, the local Guan 6-day week and a southern 7-day week, used for trade into one complex 42-day cycle.
Okay, 42 days. How does that make a year?
They use 9 of those 42-day cycles. That gives you 378 days. But here's the critical part. Every 3 years, they just drop one entire 42-day cycle.
Why drop a cycle? What does that do?
It makes their calendar incredibly accurate. With that adjustment, the Akan calendar stays within about 3 days of the Gregorian calendar over that 3-year period.
Wow. Without telescopes or modern math.
Exactly. It's an amazing feat of observational astronomy and mathematics embedded right within their ritual and market cycles. It really reframes how we should think about pre-colonial African scientific knowledge.
And these cosmic observations show up in buildings too, like the Badamaliba houses.
Yes, directly. Their house doors are aligned specifically to face the sunset on the midwinter solstice, the shortest day of the year. It symbolizes the return of Kui, their sun god, whose home is believed to be in the west where the sun sets. The architecture literally welcomes the god back.
And it connects to life and death too.
Deeply. There's often a hole in the center of the roof. It's usually covered, but it's uncovered for specific vital moments. Women traditionally give birth positioned under that hole, facing the door, to receive Kuyi's blessing and protection.
And for death.
Similarly, during funerals, which are often intentionally timed for December or January, around the solstice when Kuyi returns, the deceased person is positioned in the same way. Under the central opening, facing the door, to receive Kuyi's blessing for the transition. It links the human life cycle directly to the solar cycle, to regeneration.
So these complex systems of knowledge, they aren't just spoken or performed, they're literally woven into the material world people live in. Let's talk about beadwork first. It seems like more than just decoration.
Oh, much more. Especially in Eastern and Southern Africa, beadwork is a major art form. They often use tiny, single-color glass beads, seed beads, strung or sewn onto cloth or leather.
Creating really elaborate patterns.
Incredibly elaborate, multicolored designs. Sometimes it's hard to tell where jewelry ends and clothing begins. It really blurs that boundary.
And the beads themselves tell a story of trade, right? Global connections.
Absolutely. The history of the materials is fascinating. The very earliest beads they find are made from local stuff, like ostrich eggshell,
Mm.
simple, organic.
But imports took over.
Pretty quickly, yeah. You get glass beads coming from Egypt and Iran way back in Roman times. Then, from the 9th century or so, porcelain and glass beads arrive with Arab traders along the East African coast. Swahili coast trade.
And then the Europeans arrive.
Right. Between the 16th and 18th centuries, there's this massive flood of glass beads coming from Europe. Austria, the Netherlands, Czechoslovakia, huge quantities. They became a major trade item.
How were they used? Were they just currency?
Sometimes, but mostly they were incorporated into culture in highly symbolic ways. Take Zulu culture. Beads were essential in rituals. The specific colors, the variety a person wore, signaled their social status, their achievement.
Like medals.
Kind of. Metal beads, for instance, were specifically given as rewards for bravery in battle. And if you look at the court of the Kingdom of Benin in West Africa, you see high-ranking officials wearing these heavy, intricate collars made of coral beads. That signaled immense status, royal favor, connection to wealth, probably from sea trade.
Okay. Moving from beads to cloth. The sources say cloth is basically treated like speech in some cultures.
Yes, the Dogon people of Mali have this incredible saying, to be nude, meaning without cloth, is to be without speech.
Wow.
And their word for cloth, soy, actually has the same root as so, the word for the speech of their creator God. Cloth is language, in a way.
So the patterns on the cloths mean something.
Definitely. They can function like visual prayers. The Dogon priest, for example, during a planting ceremony, might have a replica of his own special checkered cloth painted onto the wall of a cult house. It acts as a symbolic offering.
Sounds like another example of that aesthetic of indirection you mentioned earlier, saying things without saying them directly.
Exactly. It's about encoding meaning, twisting language, or in this case, visual patterns, to conceal knowledge from outsiders, from the uninitiated.
And this gets really formalized in visual sign systems, like Nisibidi.
Nsibidi. Used by the Ichagam and Baker peoples, straddling Nigeria and Cameroon. It's much more than just simple writing. It's a sophisticated, coded communication system.
How does it work?
It's built on indirection. The name itself, Nsibidi, likely comes from a verb, nchibi, meaning to turn. It implies mental agility, cunning, double meanings. It works like a riddle.
Can you give an example?
Sure. In the context of a secret society, like the Ekpo Women's Society, they might use the Nsibidi sign that usually means talk. But within the society, its actual meaning is don't talk.
Whoa. The opposite.
Exactly. It forces the insider, the initiate, to constantly decode, to use that mental agility and chibi to understand the real message. It's perfect for the kind of secrecy and cunning needed in powerful associations.
So Insibidi isn't just recording language, it's a tool for controlling knowledge within specific groups.
Precisely. And this idea extends to writing itself, script being seen as inherently protective.
How so?
In West Africa, there's a strong tradition of enclosing written script, maybe verses from the Quran, maybe other symbols inside small charms, often square, made of red leather or cloth.
And people wear these.
Yes, sewn onto clothing or especially onto war costumes. The idea is that the physical presence of the script itself provides protection against evil spirits, against harm. The Tuareg are famous for their intricate geometric designs on these charms. The writing is the shield.
Okay, one more item of material culture. Gourds. Seemingly simple household items.
Essential household items, yeah. Mostly used by women for food, drink, storage. Men might use bottle gourds as water canteens, and Muslim men use them for ritual washing, ablutions.
But they're also decorated, right?
Highly decorated. It's a major art form in some areas. Northeastern Nigeria is really a hot spot. Groups like the Fulani, Kanuri, Hausa, they have an incredible tradition of decorating gourds.
How do they decorate them?
All sorts of techniques. Carving, burning patterns in, and they often add prestigious materials in laying beads, cowrie shells, wrapping them with metal wire, or adding bits of basketry. It turns a simple, useful object into a statement piece, a work of art, maybe showing status, carrying some visual language.
Okay, let's talk about the diaspora. The forced movement of millions of Africans across the Atlantic obviously caused immense trauma and change, but the sources highlight incredible stories of continuity and adaptation too. The banjo is a fascinating example.
It really is. The banjo's origins are clearly linked back to African instruments, particularly percussion traditions like talking drums, maybe gourd lutes as well.
But drums were often banned in North America, weren't they?
Yeah.
Especially after slave revolts.
Exactly. After the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina in 1740, colonial authorities cracked down. They outlawed African drumming, even brass horns, because they rightly feared the power of these instruments to communicate, to organize.
So how did the banjo survive?
Crucially, it was a string instrument. It wasn't classified as a drum. So even though it carried those echoes of African traditions, as the source puts it, it slipped through the ban. It endured.
Some people adapted how they used it.
Yes. There's this amazing description from Virginia in 1838. A banjo player, and get this, he's dressed in African-inspired clothes, a long white cowtail, a hat with peacock feathers, playing for a dance. And the dance includes patting juba.
Patting juba, what's that?
It's a style of rhythmic body percussion, slapping thighs, stomping feet, clapping hands. It creates complex rhythms without using a drum. So you see the banjo and patting juba working together, replacing the band drumming traditions. It's cultural adaptation under extreme pressure.
Incredible resilience.
Yeah.
And beyond music, you have places like the Sea Islands off South Carolina and Georgia, where African culture was preserved to an extraordinary degree.
Yes, the Gullah and Geechee communities, their preservation is partly due to isolation.
How were they isolated?
Geography played a role being on islands, but also economics and, sadly, disease. White plantation owners and overseers often left the islands during the hot, humid mosquito season to avoid malaria.
Leaving the enslaved Africans behind.
Right, and many of the enslaved people had originated in parts of Africa where malaria was common, so they carried genetic traits, like sickle cell, that offered some resistance. This long-term isolation, even though born of hardship, created a kind of cultural incubator.
What kinds of customs survived there?
So many things. In material culture, you see quilt patterns that directly echo West African strip weaving designs, like from the Ashanti or Ewe, basket making using coiled grasses, natural materials. The techniques are remarkably similar to West African methods.
And in daily life.
Women's ways of tying their hair, specific fishing techniques like how they knit nets, even social structures, community groups, lodges, praying bands seem to function in ways similar to traditional African societies or secret societies, providing support and continuity.
And their language, Gullah or Geechee.
It's crucial. It's not just broken English. Linguists see it as part of a whole African English Creole continuum, linking it linguistically to the Caribbean and all the way back to West Africa. It's a living linguistic connection.
Even things like games show these connections and adaptations, right? Like the game Bao.
Right, Bao. It's a board game, part of the Mancala family, popular in East Africa. It's spread along the Swahili trade routes alongside Islam, and its rules seem to have been pretty stable for a long time, at least since the 1600s.
And playing it became quite serious.
Oh, yeah. Championship-level play developed its own specific Swahili vocabulary. Words for certain moves like mataji for a capture, or ku for the main big hole or house on the board. It's not just a pastime, it's a cultural practice with its own language.
But the influence went the other way, too. European games came to Africa.
Absolutely. Drafts, or checkers, both the continental European version and the Anglo-Saxon one, and became hugely popular in Africa and the Caribbean after they were introduced.
As popular as chess.
In many places, yeah, they really took root. And interestingly, the incredible success of African and Caribbean players in international drafts championships has actually helped boost the game's popularity worldwide. It's a two-way street.
Finally, let's touch on theater. How did African performance traditions adapt to colonialism and modernity?
Well, adaptation was key. Colonial authorities, missionaries, they often tried to suppress indigenous performances. But theater found ways, often through satire, using song, masquerade, performances to subtly, or maybe not so subtly, lampoon the white colonial officers, the administrators, using humor and stereotypes as a form of resistance, of critique.
And after colonialism.
Then you see this explosion of popular theater forms. Things like the Ghanaian concert parties or Yoruba opera in Nigeria. They brilliantly fused local traditions, drawing heavily on trickster figures like Anansi with global influences.
Like what kind of influences?
You see echoes of Charlie Chaplin's physical comedy, elements borrowed from American minstrel shows, influences from Caribbean calypso, Afro-Cuban rhythms filtering into the high life music that accompanied these shows. It was this rapid, really creative blending.
And there's a more recent form too, community theater, or theater for development.
Yes, this is really important. It uses performance techniques specifically for social impact, to address community issues, public health, farming practices, local conflicts.
How does it work differently from regular theater?
The key difference is the process and the outcome. The storylines are drawn directly from the community's own experiences. But, and this is crucial, the play usually offers no neat fictional solution at the end.
It just ends with a problem.
Pretty much. The conflict is presented, staged, but then it stops. The actors might literally turn to the audience, break that fourth wall, and say, okay, what should we do? The goal is to spark discussion, debate, and problem solving within the community itself. The audience becomes responsible for finding the resolution, driving the social change.
Okay, so when people face uncertainty, illness, bad harvests, conflict, where do they turn? The sources point strongly towards divination and dreams as key ways of accessing hidden knowledge.
Absolutely central. Divination isn't just random guesswork. It involves very standardized procedures, maybe using a special diviner's basket filled with symbolic objects, or casting cowrie shells and reading the patterns.
And the diviner interprets these.
Right. But it's not just the tools. It requires this deep, extensive body of esoteric knowledge that only the diviner has learned, often through long apprenticeship. It's how they reveal information that's otherwise hidden, inaccessible, and it allows the community to review cultural truths, social norms, in light of whatever current problem they're facing.
In dreams, are they just seen as random brain activity?
Definitely not. Dreams are understood as real communication, channels opening up between spiritual beings, usually ancestors, the shades, and living humans.
So ancestors speak through dreams.
That's the belief. The Zulu, for instance, believe ancestors literally enter the dreamer's mouth while they sleep to bring important news, maybe tell them where lost cattle are or reveal the sex of an unborn child.
So not dreaming would be bad.
Paradoxically, yes. An absence of dreams can cause real anxiety. It suggests the ancestors aren't interested, they're not communicating, which is a worrying sign.
Do dreams still play a role today, maybe in different contexts?
Oh, absolutely. Look at conversion dreams in some Christian communities, for example, in places like Cameroon. People have powerful dreams filled with Christian imagery, maybe visions of Jesus or angels.
And what do those dreams do?
They function as personal charters. When someone publicly narrates their conversion dream, maybe at their baptism, it validates their personal experience, helps them claim full membership in the church, and simultaneously helps establish the church's legitimacy and spiritual truth within that local community. Dreams continue to be powerful validators.
Moving from the spiritual to the social fabric, let's look at the Gikuyu people of Kenya. Their life cycle rituals seem incredibly detailed, especially around purification.
Yes, very specific, showing a really complex internal logic. Take their ritual for a child's second birth. This wasn't a physical birth, but a purification ritual needed to cleanse the child of something called tahu.
Fahu, what's that?
It's a kind of ritual uncleanness or pollution. You could acquire it from relatives or by coming into contact with things considered ritually dangerous or out of place.
How do they purify the child?
It involved sacrificing a ram, specifically one of a single uniform color. That uniformity symbolized wholeness, purity. Then they'd mix three key things. A bit of soil from under the ram's hooves.
Representing earth?
Travel.
Probably. Then clean water from a flowing river life? Flow. And finally, the undigested contents of the ram's stomach called tatha.
Stomach contents, why that?
Tatha seems to represent domesticity, organic life, the processed essence of the homestead. It's a very potent symbolic mixture.
What do they do with it? The mother and child would both be shaved, symbolically removing the old state. Then they'd be ritually splashed 4 times with this mixture, while elders chanted prayers for the removal of the thahu. It's a complete cleansing, using elements representing their whole world, earth, water, domestic life.
Death rituals also seem very revealing about Gikuyu society.
They really highlight social differences. Only elders and wealthy people were actually buried. The bodies of the poor were often just left out in the bush.
Which explains something about their folklore.
Exactly. It helps explain why the hyena shows up so often in Gikuyu folktales as this really contemptible, greedy, morally low character, because hyenas were known for scavenging those abandoned corpses.
And for the bereaved, especially widows, the grief rituals were intense.
Very specific markers. A widow would shave her dead husband's head, and then her own head would be shaved. She had to break all her earthenware cooking pots, a powerful symbol of the end of her marriage, her domestic role in that household. She'd use castor oil for purification.
And she couldn't remarry or conceive right away?
No. Before she could start a new chapter, potentially conceive another child, there had to be a final, thorough cleansing ritual, again involving the ram's taitha. It formally closed the period of mourning and pollution, linking the end of one life cycle to the possibility of a new one.
And naming children seems equally structured, tying into lineage and identity.
Yes, Gikuyu naming followed very strict rules. It usually reflected relationships on both the mother's and father's side, often naming a child after a grandparent, ensuring the ancestor's name lived on. There were even specific rules for naming children born outside of formal marriage, making their maternal links clear, which helped maintain social order. Everyone knew who belonged where.
And other groups had different but equally systematic naming conventions, like the Luo.
Right, the Luo in southwestern Kenya have this fascinating system. Names directly reflect the time of day the child was born and their sex. They use prefixes, O for boys, A for girls.
How does that work?
So, if a boy is born very early in the morning, around dawn, he might be Amandi. A girl born then would be Akini. Mid-morning birth. Anyango for a boy. Anyango for a girl. Born at night. Otieno or Atieno. It's simple, elegant, and instantly encodes key identity information for everyone in the community. #tag Outraco.
Wow, okay, this deep dive really drives home that African expressive culture isn't just one thing. It's this incredibly rich tapestry of interconnected, really complex systems, and they all seem to have this profound internal logic.
That's definitely the main takeaway, Fanny, too. That internal logic is everywhere we looked. Think about the trickster teaching norms by breaking them. The Mande blacksmith managing dangerous supernatural energy. The Nama by taking on all these vital community roles.
Yeah, or the Okiam, the Akan orator, maintaining royal power through that careful, deliberate ambiguity and indirection.
Exactly. Or using visual arts like Nsabidi signs or textile patterns, not just as decoration, but as sophisticated coded languages carrying complex meanings. It's all deeply thought out.
And what's also striking is the sheer flexibility and continuity, how these forms adapt but endure. From the complex math of the Akan calendar hundreds of years ago to the banjo finding a new voice in the Americas under terrible circumstances.
Right. It shows that these traditions are never static. They're always dynamic, always responding to social changes, political pressures, and often they work indirectly, symbolically, as ways to manage conflict or express tensions without necessarily needing open confrontation.
That link between power, knowledge, and indirection seems really strong. The blacksmith managing Yama, the Okiam managing the chief's word, the secret societies managing knowledge through coded signs like in Nsabidi.
It's a recurring pattern, isn't it? Controlled distance, calculated communication, managing potent forces, whether supernatural or political, through carefully constructed layers.
Which leaves us with a final thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. We've seen how in so many of these traditions, from the blacksmith to the orator, wielding power or holding sacred knowledge often involves operating in the space of calculated ambiguity, of indirection. So here's the question. In our modern world, which is often drowning in just overwhelming amounts of direct information, constant noise, could the conscious use of symbolic, oblique, maybe even coded communication, the kind that's so deeply rooted in these African traditions, could that actually be a powerful tool, not just a relic of the past, but a relevant way for social commentary, for critical thinking today?